What if the most closely guarded secret on Earth isn't locked in a government vault? What if it's buried under 2 miles of ice? In 1929, researchers cataloging forgotten documents inside Istanbul's Topkapi Palace found a map they couldn't explain. Drawn in 1513. Signed by an Ottoman admiral named Piri Reis. It showed a landmass at the bottom of the world. Detailed. Proportional. Geographically specific. Antarctica. But here's the part that stops you cold: the coastline on that map doesn't show Antarctica as it looks today, buried under a glacier. It shows the shape of the continent's bare rock. The terrain underneath the ice. We didn't confirm that shape until 1958. Using seismic surveys. Modern equipment. 445 years after this map was drawn. So here's the question that nobody in the official record wants to sit with: how? How did a cartographer in 1513 draw something that wouldn't be scientifically verified for another 4.5 centuries? That's where this story starts. And it gets stranger from here. Here's the version of history most of us grew up with. Antarctica has been sealed under ice for roughly 34 million years. It was officially discovered by European sailors in 1820. It is the most isolated, inhospitable continent on Earth. Nothing lived there. Nothing was built there. End of story. For most of Antarctica's deep geological history, that consensus is solid. The science behind it is real. But here's the contrast that this whole story turns on. What it seems, a frozen wasteland, always frozen, end of the timeline. What the evidence keeps suggesting, something happened roughly 12,800 years ago, documented in geology, in ice cores, in the sediment record on 4 separate continents, that catastrophically rewrote the surface of this planet. And whatever existed before that event may have been erased so completely that we're only now starting to notice the gaps. Graham Hancock, former journalist, author, and the kind of researcher who makes mainstream archaeologists genuinely uncomfortable, has spent 3 decades pointing at those gaps. Not with alien theories. With maps. With geology. With the uncomfortable frequency of myths across cultures that had no contact with each other, all describing the same flood. His core argument: before the catastrophe that ended the last ice age, parts of Antarctica may have been accessible. And if something sophisticated existed anywhere on Earth during that window, this continent's western coastline could have been known to them. That's the theory. Hold it loosely. Because first, let's deal with what's documented. The Piri Reis map is real. Full stop. It sits in the Topkapi Palace Museum in Istanbul. It has been authenticated and studied by historians for nearly a century. Piri Reis himself left notes on the margins explaining that he compiled it from older source charts, some of which, he wrote, were of great antiquity. He didn't claim to have sailed to the southern continent himself. He claimed to be copying something that already existed. Now, the mainstream explanation is worth stating honestly. The southern landmass on the map could be a distorted projection of South America's coastline, or a speculative continent that European cartographers of the era routinely added for geographic symmetry. This was common practice. That explanation has genuine merit and shouldn't be dismissed. But here's what historian and geographer Charles Hapgood noticed in the 1960s, and what he spent years trying to shake. The outline. Specific bays. Inlets. Mountain features. Certain contours on that southern landmass match, with suspicious precision, the subglacial topography of Antarctica, not the ice sheet, but the rock beneath it. Hapgood wasn't working alone or on the fringe. He was a professor at Keene State College. He submitted his cartographic analysis to a US Air Force review. And Albert Einstein, before his death, wrote the foreword to one of Hapgood's books, calling his theory worthy of serious investigation. The committee found evidence of a sophisticated spherical projection technique built into the map's construction. One that, they concluded, shouldn't have been available to known European mapmakers of 1513. Mainstream scholars largely rejected this. Confirmation bias, they argued, you see what you want to see in ambiguous shapes. That's a fair critique. But it doesn't explain where Piri Reis got his source charts. And it doesn't explain what came next. Around 12,800 years ago, the planet collapsed. We know this. It's not Hancock's theory. It's in the geological record. Temperatures across the northern hemisphere dropped by as much as 10 degrees Celsius within decades. Glacier surged. Sea levels shifted violently. Hundreds of megafauna species, woolly mammoths, giant ground sloths, North American horses, went extinct in what looks, geologically, like a very short window. This event is called the Younger Dryas. Named, almost poetically, after an Arctic wildflower that bloomed across suddenly frozen Europe. What caused it? In 2007, a paper published in the Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, peer-reviewed, heavily scrutinized, proposed a fragmented comet impact over the northern hemisphere as the trigger. The Younger Dryas impact hypothesis. Since then, the debate in scientific literature has been fierce. Supporting evidence has been found at dozens of sites across 4 continents, black sediment layers rich in platinum, nanodiamonds, and high-temperature spherules, markers that don't form naturally from fire or flood. Other researchers have challenged the methodology. The hypothesis remains unresolved. It's an active, live argument in the literature. Here's what isn't disputed: whatever happened, it was catastrophic enough to collapse established societies, trigger continent-wide migrations, and drive biological extinctions on a massive scale. Hancock's point, and it's not a trivial one, is this: if a technically sophisticated culture existed in the millennia before the Younger Dryas, this is exactly the kind of event that would leave almost no archaeological trace. Coastal settlements, flooded. Lowland communities, buried under sediment. The survivors scattered and mythologized what they'd lost. But here's where it gets harder to wave away. And this is the piece that changes the conversation. The BedMap project, led by the British Antarctic Survey along with international partners, has spent years producing the most detailed maps ever made of what lies beneath Antarctica's ice. What they found, not a flat slab. A continent with mountain ranges, canyons, valleys, regions where the bedrock sits below sea level, compressed by the sheer weight of ice that's been building for millions of years. And then there's Lake Vostok, a liquid freshwater lake the size of Lake Ontario, sitting under 2.5 miles of ice. Sealed from the surface for an estimated 15 to 25 million years. When Russian scientists drilled into it in 2012, they found microbial life. Alive. Surviving in total darkness and isolation for geological ages. None of this proves a lost civilization. I want to be precise about that. But it proves something important: Antarctica is not a simple place. It has a complex, varied terrain. It has regions that, under different conditions, would look very different from what they look like now. And here's the key geological detail Hancock returns to: Antarctica's ice coverage has not been perfectly uniform across all timescales. During certain periods within the larger glacial cycles, some coastal regions, particularly in West Antarctica, may have experienced reduced ice cover. The extent and timing of this is debated. But the idea that the continent has been entirely static and entirely inaccessible across all of human prehistory is, at minimum, more complicated than the textbook version suggests. If a group of skilled navigators explored a partially ice-free Antarctic coastline 12,000 years ago, and if their charts were copied and recopied across centuries until one of those copies reached an Ottoman admiral in 1513, what would we expect to find? A map. Detailed. Accurate in strange ways. With no explanation for how the knowledge got there. Here's the core of it. The piece that sits at the center of this argument and refuses to quietly dissolve. We have three things that, in isolation, are each explainable. Together, they're harder. 1. A map from 1513 with geographic details of a continent not officially discovered until 1820, depicting a subglacial coastline not confirmed until the mid-20th century. 2. A geological catastrophe 12,800 years ago, documented in the physical record of multiple continents, violent enough to erase coastal civilizations entirely if any existed. 3. Flood myths. Sumerian, Vedic, the Popol Vuh, Plato's Atlantis dialogue. Stories of an advanced culture destroyed by water, preserved in oral traditions across cultures with no documented contact with each other. These myths are not evidence, but they're consistent in a way that's at least worth noting. Now, the mainstream response to all three, stated honestly, is this. The Piri race map reflects distorted South American geography and speculative cartography. The Younger Dryas had natural or extraterrestrial causes that struck already primitive societies, not advanced ones. The flood myths reflect regional disasters that echo forward in human memory. And Graham Hancock, whatever his intelligence and passion, is not an archaeologist, and his interpretations consistently exceed what the physical evidence supports. That is a legitimate critique. The man is a journalist, not a scientist. He is making an argument, not presenting a proof. But here is the counterpattern, the one that's harder to dismiss. Every single time mainstream archaeology has announced the settled limits of human history, something gets excavated that rewrites the dates. Göbekli Tepe, a complex of carved stone pillars in southern Turkey, built around 11,600 years ago, right at the edge of the Younger Dryas. Hunter-gatherers weren't supposed to build temples. Then we found one. The textbooks didn't rewrite quietly, they rewrote reluctantly, because the stones were sitting in the ground demanding an answer. The pre-Columbian earthworks of the Amazon. The underwater structures at Yonaguni in Japan. The site of Gunung Padang in Indonesia, where some researchers have published carbon dates suggesting construction activity potentially pushing back further than expected, though those dates are contested and the interpretation is disputed. The pattern isn't proof of Antarctica. The pattern is a proof of something else, that the official timeline has been wrong before. Repeatedly. And it has always required physical evidence to force the revision. The problem with Antarctica is that the physical evidence, if it exists, is under 2 miles of ice. Let's put both positions on the table. Clearly, the mainstream position, Antarctica has been glaciated for approximately 34 million years. There is no verified, peer-reviewed, physical evidence of any prehistoric human presence on the continent. The Piri race map's resemblance to Antarctic subglacial topography is coincidental or the result of motivated interpretation. Graham Hancock's work is compelling and provocative, but it asks questions the evidence doesn't yet support answering the way he answers them. The alternative position, held by Hancock and a small number of independent researchers, glacial coverage during the last ice age cycle fluctuated, and certain Antarctic coastal regions may have been accessible during specific windows before the Younger Dryas. Source charts behind the Piri race map suggest knowledge from an unknown, technically capable precursor culture. The absence of ruins is not proof of absence, it may mean the evidence is under ice we cannot yet fully penetrate. And the consistency of catastrophe myths across unconnected ancient cultures is not nothing. Both positions should be held with honesty about what they are. One is scientific consensus with strong support, the other is a hypothesis that currently lacks physical confirmation. What is not in dispute? Something dramatic happened to this planet 12,800 years ago. The ice cores are unambiguous. What it destroyed, and what, if anything, it buried, is still an open question. Here's where I land on this. We are still, right now, mapping what lies beneath Antarctic ice. New radar surveys keep returning terrain that surprises the geologists running them. The continent is larger and more complex than any previous generation knew. What would it take to resolve Hancock's thesis? One thing, an anomalous structure detected beneath the ice in a location consistent with a pre-glacial coastline. A geometry that can't be explained by geology. No credible report describes such a finding. No verified radar return. No peer-reviewed paper. That matters. The absence isn't proof, but it's the honest current state. And yet, 2 miles of ice is an extraordinarily difficult thing to search. We've mapped the bedrock beneath it only in rough strokes. There are regions of West Antarctica where the radar coverage is still incomplete. So here's the question that I keep coming back to, the one I think deserves more than a Wikipedia answer. If a technically sophisticated people existed before the Younger Dryas, and if a catastrophic event buried their coastal world under advancing ice and risen seas, what would the evidence look like 12,000 years later? Maybe nothing. Erased completely. Or maybe, just maybe, a map. Compiled from sources no one can locate. Showing a coastline no one was supposed to know. Sitting in a palace in Istanbul for 400 years before anyone understood what they were looking at. That could be coincidence. The world is full of coincidences. But the past has a habit of making us feel certain about things we haven't actually proven. Tell me what you think in the comments. Is the Pyre race map evidence of something the ice buried, or the most elaborate coincidence in the history of cartography? And if this one got under your skin, the story of Göbekli Tepe, the temple that physically, archaeologically should not exist, is on screen right now. That one has the physical evidence. Dig in.